the free kick that was disallowed, probably a bit harshly at the weekend. He can provide that. He's got 40 goals in 160 odd games for Palace. I mean, he's very versatile, and I mean, Arteta wants two quality players in every position, and Eze just gives them, that option. You saw some of the footage that you were showing earlier. What a likeable guy he is, sort of dealing with fans' sort of requests as well, and having a little bit of a sort of joust with your reporter at training. He's a very likeable guy. I mean, covering England, we know how popular he is. But I would absolutely echo what Riyadh's saying in terms of, he is a number 10. He's probably a left-sided number 10. He can play out wide, but he's certainly not a replacement for Havertz, who, when he can play as a centre forward, which he did in the Champions League final, he's not that. I think this is quite interesting in terms of the dynamic around Martin Odegaard, because he wasn't at his best last season, and he is their main number 10, as Riyadh was saying. I think Eze is good enough to put pressure on Odegaard. Difficult in a way because he's captain. You've also got Nwaneri. Let's not sort of ignore him in certainly the longer term equation. But in terms of Arsenal fighting on four fronts, Eze is a wonderful addition.
And Riyadh, what about Spurs fans? What might they be thinking this evening in light of all this? Because will they not want accountability as to why a player has slipped through their grasp when it looked as though they were at the forefront of signing him?
Exactly what they're going to be thinking. It's the deja vu. It's going to, rightly or wrongly, it is going to escalate this whole narrative around Daniel Levy. Now, Tottenham have been talking to Palace for 10 days about this, and the interest predates that substantially. This interest in Eze extends well beyond this year. So why couldn't they get it done? One of the suggestions I've been reading this evening is that there'd been a slight objection to Eze playing in the Conference League tomorrow night. Now, the knee-jerk reaction might also be the correct one. Well, why were they haggling when Arsenal's interest has been so well known, and the circumstances around Havertz as well? Should this have been predictable? Would this have been predictable? Could they have seen this coming? Why haven't they acted quicker? And that is going to feed into it. I think there's an element as well with this where, look, if we're going to give Daniel Levy his due, there has been some good business at Tottenham. Kudus, I thought, looked very good against Burnley. Palhinha is a quality player. They've kept Romero, but we're also talking about, say, the Gibbs-White situation. It's been 3 or 4 weeks since that fell through. What movement has there been since then? We're not going to get Savinho. So where has been the movement? Where has been the activity to fill this area that clearly they want that they want to achieve? It hasn't happened. And given everything that's gone on previously with Daniel Levy, its relationship with the fan base, I think it's going to make a fraught situation even worse. But look, there's still time before the window closes. Where do they turn to now? I would absolutely love the idea of Morgan Rogers playing in that side. Aston Villa fans wouldn't thank me for saying that, perhaps. But what did Tottenham go and do? Wissa's another name who's on their radar, but the injuries with Maddison, Kulusevski, we still haven't got a return date on seeing him come back in. Tottenham do need to address that creative shortfall. Looking at Eze, I thought he was absolutely tailor-made to go into that starting 11. So it's a huge loss for Tottenham, again, if there isn't another twist.
Yeah, and Henry, as we understand it, the Spurs were in the prime position to get this man's signature, to get Eze's signature, had agreed terms, but it was Palace that wanted him to stay and play in the Conference League. So perhaps a touch of unluckiness in the way Spurs have gone about things. But if they don't get Eze, which it doesn't look like they're going to, who do they turn to now? Who might be in the frame, do you think? Is there an Eze alternative, really?
Well, just on your earlier point, it's interesting to see who pays for the insurance for him playing tomorrow night if this deal does go through, or it is on edge. And obviously, we hope he gets through fine. The England squad is announced on Friday week, and he's bound to be in it. So who do they go for now? I mean, it is a very sort of pertinent point, particularly with Maddison out. I think, interestingly, from Eze's perspective, is he more likely to go to the World Cup? And this is a question I'm sure he's been asking himself. But is he more likely to go to the World Cup, playing, and he would be starting for Tottenham without Maddison. He would be their number 10 there. Will he be a guaranteed starter at Arsenal? He's got to put a pressure on Odegaard, maybe on whoever's going to play on the left to get in there, or whether he influences games from the bench. So I think that's a fascinating dynamic there. But yeah, coming back to your point, Spurs, absolutely, they have to go again. And what is going to be the mood of Richarlison, who earlier in the day was being linked with a move out of the club? You know, do they not want him after he had such a fine performance at the weekend?
Yeah, one definitely will be keeping an eye on there. Henry, Ria, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Star, as the fallout from that Alexander Isak statement continues to make headlines. Stay with us. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to Henry Winter of Sports Illustrated and Riyadh Al-Samarrai, the Daily Mail's chief sports feature writer. Now, let's go to the back of the Mail, because I think it's been at least 20 seconds since we've had a chat about Alexander Isak. So we're going to talk about him again. In the Mail, Riyadh, they've said that Isak made Toon owners look like good guys. Now, Isak is a goal scorer. He scores multiple goals. Is this statement that he's released a bit of an own goal?
So, this has been the saga of the summer. I was on the show last week talking about it. I don't like players going on strike. I think it's a dreadful look. He's under contract for 3 years. I think there is a nuanced discussion to be had about what a player owes a club, and ordinarily I'm very sympathetic with the players. I think particularly in their early years, they're treated like commodity, like cattle. They get moved around, they get released at a club's whim. So I always operate from a sort of standpoint of sympathy for a player. But in this case, He's got 3 years on his contract. He's a first team player. He's down tools. I think it's pretty poor. He's not the first person to do it. He won't be the last guy to do it either. But I don't. I do think there are ways to conduct yourself in these scenarios. Clearly, he feels he's been lied to. He's told us that in the statement, which in itself was the natural continuation of these things. The only piece of the saga puzzle that was missing were the thoughts of the player. We have them now. Newcastle have fired back in a robust manner as well. But we got to see how this is going to untangle itself. Newcastle are under no imperative to sell him. I don't think at this stage any of us truly know what those promises were. What Staveley sort of suggested to him a summer ago before everything changed. I think the devil's going to be in that detail, but it's a verbal assurance, and that's not the same as a written contract. The written contract he's got says he's got 3 years left at Newcastle. Get on with it. You're a professional footballer. You're not earning minimum wage. Go out there and play football. The season's started. It's a World Cup year. I don't see how any of this plays in his advantage right now.
Henry, I'm interested in your point of view, because you were at the PFA Awards on Tuesday night when this statement dropped. What was the reaction around the room when that statement was released?
Well, the first reaction was when 10 players, rather than the traditional 11, which normally happens in football teams, for the team of the year, trooped up on stage. Quite a few Liverpool players in there. And obviously, Alexander Isak, who'd been voted by the PFA members as a member of the team of the year, obviously wasn't there. So, there was a bit of sort of totting up, realising there were only 10 there. And then, of course, probably after Mo Salah received his award for Player of the Year, there were a lot of Liverpool attackers on view. Robbie Fowler was also on stage. Ian Rush was on stage. They were dishing out awards. And then the Instagram message from Isak, who wants to join Liverpool, suddenly dropped, and everyone was sort of scrolling their phones and applauding at the same time. And then obviously sort of everyone sort of went outside, and there was an after party, and the conversation sort of carried on there. And of course, at 1:45, Newcastle's very sort of firm, actually I thought quite sort of measured statement. I mean, it was all about sort of when the transfer window closes, the dressing room door remains open. They want to reintegrate him. I mean, I echo Rias's views in terms of a player's ambitious. It's a short career. He's 25. He wants to play for Liverpool, the best team in the country. You can understand that. But all this sort of the devil is in the detail about what he was promised or not promised. The most important devil in the detail is his contract, and he should have a word with his agent about forgetting to put a release clause in, which is just commonplace on the continent. They should have picked up on that. And then, of course, the fact that he's got 3 years left of his contract. I was really surprised when he came out with that statement last night, that he didn't then follow it up with a transfer request and say, right, let's do these things with a little bit more class, a little bit more formality, show a bit more respect for Newcastle United, to Eddie Howe, who's been fantastic in all of this, to Newcastle fans who have supported Isak and backed him to be one of the best players in the world now, along with the coaching and his own drive. And then Liverpool have to follow up that, because they clearly are interested in such a world-class centre-forward. They then have to follow that up with a bid which is more commensurate with what a player of that standing should be going for. He's not a £110 million player, particularly when we've seen some of the prices this transfer window. So put a proper bid in, and then maybe there's a conversation to be had. But there's not much sympathy for Isak around at the moment.
Yeah, what makes this drama all the more dramatic, I suppose, is how Isak's conduct is in sharp contrast to how perhaps Mark Gahey and Eberechi Eze have performed and conducted themselves. I want to take you to the back of The Guardian, where they talk about Alexander Isak and Newcastle approaching the point of no return. Riath, is that where we're at now? Is that what we're getting close to? How does this saga end?
I don't believe there is a point of no return. I think we've seen throughout for decades the history of the game. There is always a way back, and let's just say the window closes. Newcastle and Isak's not going to sit on the bench or sit in the bomb squad for for the entirety of the season, particularly in a World Cup year. Newcastle aren't going to let that happen either. So I don't believe there is a point of no return, perhaps in the relationship with the fans, but even that can change with a well-timed couple of goals here and there, which he will score. He is a brilliant player. But I think it's interesting that some of the stuff about the agent and Alan Shearer, we might be planning on coming on to this in a moment, but like what Henry says there is absolutely spot on. There has to be a release clause put into the contract. They're pretty ubiquitous in the game, in the game now, and it's there. It's a mechanism. Use it. But also, I'm perhaps being a little unkind to Isak here, but as I see it, he's not a child. He's 25 years old. When it comes to being advised, go on strike, Alexander. Down tools. This is the way to do it. He's 25 years old. I think anyone who is as good at anything in life as he is as a footballer has a brain driving all of it. He is a smart enough man to take responsibility for his own actions. So I think sometimes we divert a lot of blame onto the agents in these scenarios. 9 times out of 10, it might even be true. But in something like this, he is the person who decides, I'm not going training. I'm not going to make myself available. I am going to hit send on this statement. It's on him. So I'm not feeling very generous to him at all when it comes to exonerating any blame. So what happens next? That's also in his court. I don't think anyone would blame a guy for wanting to go to Liverpool. He's quite possibly taken a look at the turmoil behind the scenes at Newcastle. He can also see around the PSR situation that all of this wealth doesn't mean that they can go and spend it and become Champions League winners immediately, as we might have naively thought when the takeover happened. But he's got a contract, he's got to honour it, and he's got to take a fair amount of responsibility for putting himself in this mess as well.
Yeah, and another player that perhaps whose conduct perhaps hasn't been as exemplary as it could be, Yoane Wissa, Henry. What have you made of this saga, and how does that one end? Because another bid has been rejected by Brentford.
Well, I think Liverpool fans have quite rightly been pointing out that when it looks like they're pursuing a player, aren't Newcastle almost doing the same thing, obviously with a lesser player, in terms of pursuing, whether unsettling Wissa, who clearly wants to go there. I mean, at least bids are going in, and bids are sort of more commensurate. You could argue actually they're over his value, given the fact that his contract is running down. I mean, 35 million, is that the Times? 35 million plus 5 million in add-ons has been turned down. I mean, that is that is quite a lot for a player. He is a good player, but he's not. He's certainly not a replacement for Isak. Whenever I hear him being mentioned as a replacement for Isak, if anything, he's a replacement for Callum Wilson, so the number 2 striker. So if you want good conduct, and I know they were at a club who, for PSR reasons, were considering selling, you do certainly look for Eze, who is trained, who has played, Gay, who's been linked with Liverpool, who's trained, who's going to play as well. So that is where the most impressive conduct's been.
Riyadh, I want to turn our attentions now to boxing, and this quite surprising news that Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned boxer, is going to be fighting Gervonta Davis. Now, when you look at the tail of the tape, my goodness me, they couldn't be more different. One is 6'1". Gervonta Davis is 5'5". There's 30 kilos difference in their weight. I mean, how surprised were you by this matchup? Fortunately,
not in the slightest, because this is boxing and it just drops its pants for money at any given opportunity. I find these fights disgusting. I know I've said this on the show a number of times, and I'm forever getting called miserable about it, but, this is a hill I would not die on, but happily limp across. These are freak shows. There is nothing credible about Jake Paul. He is a professional idiot. He is making money, and good luck to him. Maybe I'm the idiot for judging him, but look, he makes his money by being a fool on the camera. Boxing is giving him a playground to do it. Now, Gervonta Davis is a guy who, he's a lightweight, but he is someone who we would put in the pound for pound rankings, not number one, but he's in the conversation around the best pound for pound fighters in the world. Even as a lightweight, if he takes this fight remotely seriously, he blows this buffoon away. I don't want to see any of that. I think it's going to be an absolutely dreadful day for boxing when one of these guys takes it seriously against Jake Paul. There will be an accident and it will throw a spotlight on the sport, which in many ways is massively overdue. But it's a horrible fight. They're calling it an exhibition. There'll be some kind of nonsensical outcome to it, and Jake Paul will rumble on and fight again. But the fight against Mike Tyson, I think it did something like, the publicity said it did 100 million views on Netflix. There's clearly a market for this guy. Quite wide is beyond me.
There is. Riyadh, we're going to have to leave it there. I think you didn't pull any punches there in your assessment of that situation. Riyadh, Henry, thank you very much for your time. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Backpages tonight at hour. The show is also available as a podcast. Just download Backpages wherever you get your podcast. Coming next, we'll be speaking Eberechi Eze.